The puck is about to drop on your favorite all-Canadian hockey podcast. Without further ado, here are your co-hosts, Mick and Grant. Enjoy Canada Puck. Hey guys, welcome to the Canada Puck Podcast, your weekly recap of what's going on in the world of Canada, the world of hockey, specifically in Canada, just as the name implies. I'm your co-host, Mick. You can find me on Twitter at ProfitMick, and I'm joined every episode by my lovely and talented co-host,
Grant, on Twitter at Fourth Line Sports. Kind of a little fucky in the NHL this week. We had huge slates, like 12, 14 games, sandwiched between 1, 2, and 1 games. But Saturday now, Saturdays are typically the day to be a hockey fan, and that is the case today, as we got 12 games on the action, and most of the Canadian teams will be playing tonight. There's only, I think, one notable exception, but it's going to be a good weekend.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it is kind of balanced, especially from last week, like we were talking. I think it was a light slate last Saturday, and then they loaded it full of sports on Sunday, right? And I was actually looking, I started off my Sunday last week. We want to jump back in the time machine till last weekend. Had a nice Raptors game at 11 that I watched, followed by jumping between Tampa Bay and Green Bay and Calgary Flames and the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then had a nice little nightcap with Buffalo versus Kansas City. And I sat on the couch from about 11 till 9 at night, and I thought, man, this is great. I wish I could spend more time on the couch just watching sports, where my wife gave me a sharp kick to the side and told me I do that for 4 months a year, and that's called football. So
That's some serious ass grooving too. I can't imagine, that's got to be tough to get up from.
Oh, it is. I end up having to go to yoga Monday morning, just kind of get the blood going, release those tight muscles and stuff like that, have a nice massage, just get things going, right?
Toxin flush.
It's tough, it's tough, so.
But when did they bring back Raptors games at 11? I thought they got rid of those Sunday morning gems.
I don't know. I don't know if they're back to. The schedule is kind of hit or miss. And,
I think the league just complained because everybody was too hungover to play on Saturday or Sunday mornings against the Raps. And that's why they always won Sunday mornings. I think there was a 3-year period where they lost 3 games because everybody was so hungover.
Oh, I imagine the nightlife, the Saturday nightlife in Toronto, is one of the best in the city. So a bunch of these young, rich, attractive men walking around that city there's no excuse not to have a good time. So, and you saw that often on the Sunday mornings. So,
go for a little Bellini at the Hard Rock Cafe if that's still a thing.
Not right now, but potentially in the past. So, yeah. Naturally. So the way the show kind of works is we jump through headlines. So we kind of look at what are the big stories going on with all the Canadian teams. We're going to give you a little bit of gambling advice, try and win you some money. I guess I should say at some point a disclaimer. We're not professionals. These are our amateur opinions. So if you wager large amounts, you cannot seek financial reimbursements from us. So take it at your own risk. We've got some daily fantasy advice for you. And that's kind of it. So, that's how we're going to roll. So if we start in the Mass Mutual East, which is everyone wants to start, what's kind of a big headline for this non-Canadian hockey division?
The East. So, it's not in Boston, but the Washington Capitals and Zdeno Chara will be playing the Boston Bruins tonight. And a big part of me is hoping that Zdeno Chara gives Brad Marchand the old, what's that Val Kilmer cowboy movie? Anyways, at the end where he shoots him and then there's just a big hole in his stomach? I'm hoping Zdeno Chara does that to Brad Marchand with a slap shot. That's what I'm hoping for on tonight's NHL East action.
Yeah, a man can dream. A man can dream. I'm going to be talking...
Tombstone, that's what it's called.
Tombstone, all right. Now, isn't that about Wyatt Earp? Isn't Wyatt Earp also a movie about Wyatt Earp, but Tombstone's also a movie about Wyatt Earp, and they made 2 movies about Wyatt Earp at the same time?
I haven't even seen the Wyatt Earp movie, but
yeah.
Maybe I have a new afternoon activity, as there will be no hockey on.
There you go. For myself, I think that is kind of the marquee matchup. They're the two kind of, as you see, they're in the top of the standings, the two heavyweights slugging it out. What about Honda West? What's going on in the Honda West this week? Anything noteworthy?
I don't know if it's noteworthy per se, but the Vegas Golden Knights have the COVID, or the distinction of being the COVID team out there. So it started with the coaching staff, and we saw it earlier in the week because Kelly McCrimmon had to step behind the bench and coach the Knights just as exhaustive precaution. But lo and behold, the next day, player and coach test positive. They had to cancel versus the Blues on Thursday, and then they postponed versus the Sharks. So COVID isn't done, I should say, rearing its ugly head on the NHL season.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it'll be the first. I don't know if it'll be the last. I mean, on the plus side, and I guess it's almost a different discussion, but football kind of seemed like they were set in stone. They had their 17-week schedule. Has hockey released their full schedule right now? Or have they only released half the schedule, thinking if things get better, then they could do some like interdivision play? Or is that the NBA I'm thinking of?
Yeah, you might be thinking it's the NBA.
Okay.
The NHL is set until, I want to say, middle of May, and then playoffs start. But they've come out flat out said there's no like interdivisional play that's going to be happening.
So I'm just wondering too, like if we find that there's some outbreaks, right? So all of a sudden in the Honda West division, there's enough COVID cases to shut down games. Could they put the rest of the games on pause, right? Because they're not really dealing with. There's nothing else in these arenas right now. They're not dealing with kind of the reimbursing of the fans. So I wonder if they could just put a pause on it and like extend the schedule back a couple weeks because they don't have like a drop dead. This is our Super Bowl date, right? Like they don't have a Stanley Cup Finals has to be won at this point. I mean, there's obviously key dates on the calendar, but I do wonder if there's that little bit of wiggle room coming forward.
I don't think there is any wiggle room. And one thing that I'm not sure of is, and they call them postponements, so I don't know, are they planning on rescheduling these down the road? If so, like, how the hell are you going to fit this in? Because teams are already playing a game every 2 nights. But with the Tokyo Olympics coming in August, or, allegedly coming in August, the NHL wanted to avoid the scheduling because their broadcasting rights with NBC will be impacted by NBC's broadcasting rights of the Olympics. So it's really going to impact the NHL. So that's why they've said these hard and fast dates of we have to do this now and to avoid these like losing out on billions of dollars in broadcasting in August if that's the case. So
gotcha. Now wasn't there something that the Olympics were postponed?
So there was this big kerfuffle like, oh yeah, some Tokyo officials said that the Olympics were going to be postponed.
Okay.
But then the IOC came out and said, no, we're not going to. That's just hearsay. And then 2 days later, they have this magical rule book all of a sudden. It's going to be announced, I think, early next week what the parameters are for completing the games.
Okay.
But I don't know. Like, the speculation is, like, there's going to be bubbles. So, like, sports bubbles here, and the, like, no interaction. So, like, scale down, different atmosphere type thing. But
there's not going to be, like, the 1 million condoms delivered to the athletes' village this year? For shame.
And that's like, it's just sad that that's exactly where my brain went. All I thought was like, some poor shot putter is going to miss out on some cool Lithuanian gymnast, and maybe that's a love story that would have changed the world. And now we'll never know.
It's really disappointing. Really disappointing. How about the Discover Central, the last non-Canadian hockey division? Anything going on in that land that's cool? Needs to be talked about?
No, I think they've kind of been impacted by COVID the most to start the season. The part that scares me is that Columbus at 4-2-3 is at the top of the division. And that's not even with Laine in the lineup. He finally got his work visa sorted out. So now he's, I think, a 2-week quarantine because he just arrived yesterday from being able to play now. So I don't know. We'll see how that division pans out. Tampa Bay played only 5 games. Dallas and Florida are at 4 just because of the cancellations with COVID.
Yeah, it kind of just seems like slow moving, for the most part. So, but anyways, it is kind of interesting how sometimes these teams make these trades and you're like, oh, without their top center, what's going to happen? Well, thus far, I don't know. I mean, Winnipeg and Columbus, without the respective parties actually in the building yet in their lineups, I mean, playing pretty good hockey this last week, right? Like that's one of kind of the stories I guess we can get on when we get to the Jets. But like, I don't know. It's weird, the kind of the ripple effects that happen sometimes with trades, right? All of a sudden, guys care a little bit more, and like, oh yeah, you know what? We don't. This job isn't guaranteed. Weird.
Just to do the cross sport metaphor that we love to do here. You saw the same thing with the Houston Rockets. As soon as James Harden was shipped out, all of a sudden they won like 4 of 6.
Yeah.
Scoring went up. The team atmospheres look good, or like chemistries look good. So I don't know. It does speak to like lineup composition and what to expect with the people you have, and really the telling sign will be how these teams perform with these like, I don't want to say disruptive presences, but big personalities enter the room and say, this is how we're going to do things now.
Yeah, okay, but now on to the Scotia North, the reason we're all here. Best division in sports, as irrefuted by me. I don't know what that means. I'm thinking that means like I said it and no one's like saying, no, that's wrong. Scotia North, starting at the bottom though, we've got the Ottawa Senators, who have not won a game since the opening game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Since that time, they are 0-6-1. Who would have thought the Ottawa Senators sucked,
I gotta say this hurts because I have over 43.5 points, and through 3 games I was like, this is exactly what I was expecting from the Senators. And then paying attention to their game scores from the last few games, like, oh no, what are you doing, Ottawa?
Yeah, did I jump on that too? That's unfortunate.
Their bleeding chances, like defensively, and granted, you're playing Vancouver, and Vancouver's a good offensive team, but when you're giving up 15 high danger chances a game, it's going to be tough to win because they've really only been managing like low double digits, like 10, 11, 12, and that's at the high end of the spectrum. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think you're just seeing that kind of they're a rebuilding team, right? Yeah, they've got some good pieces in place, but it's going to take a little while for the chemistry, right? Lots of these guys have never played together. They're into a kind of a toxic environment, right? Like if you listen to kind of just the owner and the media in the last couple of years, I don't think everything in Ottawa is super hunky-dory, right? So getting these guys kind of meshing together, maybe later in the year we see some kind of surges where things start clicking, but as of right now, the outlook doesn't look good. So on the plus side, your team, unless you're an Ottawa Senators fan, did not trade and sign Matt Murray for $25 million. So that's something to look forward to,
That is a positive. I got to mention this tweet that I saw, and maybe it was even a week and a half ago, but it was basically just a snapshot of the Senators when they had that taxi debacle back in Arizona a few years ago. And the tweet read, the original taxi squad. And I got a kick out of that. I thought that was an A+ tweet.
It's not bad. How about on to move up one spot, the Calgary Flames, who returned to action last Sunday after our pod, after a little bit of a hiatus. And I've really just kind of sucked. They played 3 games. They lost 2 to the Maple Leafs. They lost 1 to Montreal 2 nights ago. Playing Montreal again tonight. What's going on with Calgary?
Calgary is on the wrong end of puck luck, I'll tell you that much. And they have outplayed, basically since the first game of the season, they have outplayed every one of their opponents, at least from a metrics perspective. So that is, they're creating more chances, outpossessing. But the thing that's not supporting their success is the output, and that is they're just not having any luck finding the back of the net. Markstrom's been huge for them, and I think that for them to be successful, if they can't figure things out, he's going to have to steal a few more games than I thought he was going to have to. But just plainly, the Flames are better than what their record implies right now, and I do expect some wins to follow. And maybe that's some foreshadowing for the Bettor Advice segment that you can...
Son of a gun. We had the same bets last week. We're probably going to have money on the same spot this week.
All right, maybe I'll call an audible then. I was debating 2 things, so okay. I'll change it up.
I mean, we could talk about it. And, again, we both put our stamp of approval on something, maybe that's a good sign, right? It doesn't have to be a head-to-head. We can't have similar thoughts, right? So,
have you not listened to our podcast over the last 5, 6 years now? Every time we're on the same side of the coin, the universe just has to show us how stupid we are.
I forgot about the universe. Shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple notes I have just from the last couple weeks, because they were playing the Leafs. I tended to watch those games a little bit more. I'm a little bit of a homer in that sense. I still really hate the Saddle Dome music. I'm not even there. I'm not in person. still kind of irks me. I don't know. I don't know if it's just the acoustics of that building, but just listening on air, listening to the music in the background, I'm still like, production quality is just amateur. This is the professional league. I expect professional quality. On a side note, one of the topics everyone's been talking about is Matthew Tkachuk this last week. And I just have a note actually for the Flames bench. We're about, I don't know, like 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon. Somebody on the bench, there's a couple minutes left in the Leafs Flames game. They're down a goal. Somebody's got to tell Matthew Tkachuk that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just beat the Green Bay Packers and are going to the Super Bowl. So you're having about 3.8 million viewers switch from that game to your game. Don't be an asshole and do anything stupid in the next little while, because we do not want over 3 million viewers. I'm sure that's, at least if they were switching kind of like I did. See you drop your knee on the back of Jack Campbell's neck. So really that's on Flames management right there. That is on their head coach. That's on their assistants. Somebody's got to be in their ear being like, guys, we're having a big shift in viewership right now. Don't be an asshole. That's my take to the Calgary Flames is you got to think of those things, right? So
yeah, our brain went to the same incident, and I'm glad you brought this up because I forgot to mention it earlier. I was so happy when Muzzin flipped that puck at Tkachuk. For him to get a taste of his own medicine like that, I was like, oh man, like just that sweet poetic justice. What I'm curious about, because as an Oilers fan, obviously I'm familiar with Tkachuk and his goofy ass antics. He answered the bell against Cassian last year.
Yep.
After all that goofy shit with McDavid, very next game, he took his beating like a man. Will Muzzin respond the same way and give Tkachuk the same courtesy now that the shoe's on the other foot? What do you think?
Going forward, it's going to be an interesting matchup, right? The next time these guys get to face off, I think that's in a couple weeks. I think you threw it out there like later in February. I would think so. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the bigger guns, right? If there is kind of a Muzzin, Wayne Simmons line out there, kind of willing to give him a taste of his own. Yeah, basically just challenging him. Kind of the point of the business. I know they had a players-only meeting yesterday, as reported, and I do wonder if it's just one of those things where, like, do you think eventually you get sick and tired of the antics? Like, we're losing, you're a good player, but really you're just a pain in the ass, and everyone just kind of starts tuning Tkachuk out, and he starts becoming sandpaper on his own team, right? And does that lead to problems down the road? So,
I don't know about I'm sure it's different with every personality, because you see it with, like, going way back, like Sean Avery. Sean Avery wasn't a guy who was really respected by teammates. He kind of did that same sandpaper, get under your skin role. But then you look at, like, more contemporary with Brad Marchand, and he's exactly that, where he's like this super pest. But, like, Boston has embraced him, and maybe that speaks to Boston's mentality as a team or as a community, because that has been kind of their defining quality over the years, is to just be this team that just rubs you the wrong way. So I don't know. Maybe it boils down to Tkachuk and his presence in the locker room, and maybe if we see that he's traded, obviously we know it wasn't going to work, but maybe they can embrace that, kind of like Boston's embraced Marchand.
Well, and winning fix all, right? Like if they're not a perennial powerhouse, if they're not going to Stanley Cup finals, if they're not looking competitive season after season, I do think those acts run short really quickly, right? Like, winning is the ultimate, regardless of what happens. It's if you're winning, if you're having success. So if you're not seeing the success with this squad kind of going forward, I do wonder if that is going to be a talking point, right? And then once kind of the media and the fans start kind of picking it up, and all of a sudden he's not a fan favorite anymore, you wonder how those things go. So really hope the kind of Flames flip things around. But on to number 5 with the Edmonton Oilers. On the outside looking in, they're 4 points out of a playoff spot right now in late January. Can they make the postseason?
If they want to make the postseason, they have to do 2 things differently. First of which, obviously, these defensive lapses late in the games. They have had they've been tied or the lead in the third period over the last 4 games, and they've lost 3 of those games. It's not all on Koskinen, but when you see stupid goals, like ones that go under your arm, be the difference. And it was Austin Matthews, and we all know what Austin Matthews brings to the table. But, like, why are you letting in goals under your arm? Like, that just seems like a C+ goaltender move where you're like, oh, maybe I should protect under my arm, or like, how are you getting beat that like in this limited spot from 50 feet out? So that kind of stings a little bit. So, defensive lapses are one thing, especially in the third period, but man, like, goaltending needs to be addressed. And Ken Holland just sitting at best, they make a trade right now, and we're still 2 weeks away from that guy being able to play with the Oilers. And it just, I don't know if they're hoping Koskinen will be a $4 million goalie all of a sudden, but he hasn't shown it thus far.
Yeah. Again, I think this is one of those teams we've seen a pretty big change in terms of roster composition. They might be second behind kind of the Senators with just the number of pieces they moved in and out. Again, I think give them some time. You're not dead and out at this point. I guess you've played 10 games. That is almost 20% of the season over. Can you figure it out? Draisaitl, McDavid, they're still the players. So those other pieces can kind of start clicking together. I wouldn't raise too many warning flags at this point. But I should give a big shout out. This last week, was Wayne Gretzky's birthday. Was it a big birthday? I don't know. Might have been a big one. But apparently also
60. He turned 60.
It was 60. I thought it was a big one because they were kind of giving shout outs. And apparently Kobe Bryant passed away on Wayne Gretzky's birthday, and I was like, oh, that's unfortunate.
That's really fucky timing, actually. One generation star to the other.
Yeah. So as a result, throwing on the Great Ones jersey, and also kind of being a little bit of a sandpaper. They're playing the Leafs tonight, so go Oilers, go, right?
So you're the Kachuk of the podcast, is what you're saying. Then.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And again, as long as we're winning, it's fine. It's when we start losing, then that's when the relationship kind of gets fractured, and I get traded. So.
Man, I can't believe we're dubbing our success a win, but all right, I'll take it. I
guess. Just mediocrity. Like we haven't dipped down, but I think it's because we're so low we can't go any lower. So on to the playoff spots, though. So the top four, these are the big guys. These are going to be the movers and shakers. Number 4, we got the Vancouver Canucks. Clipping along. I feel like last week we were kind of down and out on them. A couple games against the Ottawa Senators, though, will turn your fortunes around. So.
It's kind of crazy. Like, this team, obviously, we know what they bring offensively, and you're right about a few of those players starting to turn things around. But defensively, this team is, like, hot garbage, man. Like, hands down. And I know that they played 3 more games than the next closest competitor, but they're, without a doubt, like, leaps and bounds, giving up more opportunities than any other team in the league right now. And I don't know how sustainable their success can be, because we saw it early in the season against the better teams where it wasn't working. And it's fine to beat up Ottawa, maybe to a lesser, but like outside of Ottawa, I don't even see another team that they can beat up that easily. Yeah. So unless they figure things out defensively, I'm sticking to my guns here that I think Vancouver is going to be on the outside of the playoff picture looking in at the end of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm now circling kind of 4, 5, and 6, Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary. It might come down to those Pacific teams, the old Pacific teams, kind of fighting for a playoff spot right at this point. Like, at least that's what it kind of looks like on paper. So it is going to be kind of just them beating up on Ottawa and then each other. And then we'll see if kind of the top 3 teams move forward. But yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for years where Jim Benning, he hit on Quinn Hughes, looked like Elias Pettersson's $1 million. The JT Miller trade has worked out in their favor thus far, but he surrounded these A+ moves with a bunch of Ds, right? And if you look from the Roussells to the Louis Ericssons that still exist there's just so many bad like holes that I think as a fan and just anyone that understands the basics of how the salary cap operates, you would think they're bad moves, right? Like, no one's sitting there being like, that was a good signing. And I think we're just kind of seeing that play out, right? Where there's just this super imbalance in this team. So,
do you think that they can shake out of the Eriksson contract? I don't even know if he's playing. I think he's been a healthy scratch for them. Or maybe he's buried in the minors so they don't have to carry his salary. But do you think that they can do what the Oilers did with Lucic and find a trade partner?
I mean, I think they've been trying for a couple of years. Like, this isn't a new story that Louis Ericsson's this might be like 3 years down the road. I don't know what that is. I mean, potentially with like a Seattle coming in, could they say, we'll give you a first Louis Eriksson for a second round pick or something like that, and take that asset and kind of move it for some cap flexibility potentially, right? And I guess that's how you'd have to do it, right? Or like move some type of prospect with Eriksson. So
you don't think very highly of this new Seattle franchise, then, do you?
No.
Just walking around with wool over their eyes.
Well,
here, take the worst contract in the NHL.
I mean, that's what Vegas did, right? Like when Vegas came in, they were taking bad contracts and they were accrued a bunch of assets, right? And then they were able to kind of move those pieces for better pieces down the road. But like that's at least that's in my mind how Vegas kind of operated early on, right? Like you saw some of those trades and you're like, why are they just taking on this terrible deal? And you're like, oh, I see, because what they're getting in return.
Yeah, it was one of those paper clips to Lamborghini situations in Vegas. But I think the league caught on to that, and I don't know if Seattle can duplicate what Vegas did, because I don't think anybody wants to look as foolish, at least through the first 3 years, as giving this expansion franchise the keys to the NHL's success and other teams floundering. But it will be interesting, and you're right. They have to take on some salary because they got to get up to that cap floor. So, you know what? I'm sure Vancouver Canucks fans have their fingers crossed that Louis Eriksson is that guy who's going to be...
Or Tyler Myers or Antoine Roussel. I mean, it doesn't have to be Louis Eriksson. Like there are other pieces that could be moved. So
Eriksson's just the worst. Though.
Yeah,
and that's coming from a team that had the Lucic contract. So.
Yeah, it wasn't good. About number 3, Winnipeg Jets. They looked like... What did they do this week?
They had games against... Was it Calgary this week?
No. Were they just quiet? Well, they beat the Oilers. They had that comeback win against the Oilers on Tuesday. And since then, I don't think they've done a lot.
Yeah, it looks like they've been out of action since the 26th. Obviously I wiped those Oilers games from my brain. Those were 2 of the games the Oilers had the lead in the third period. They came back, scored with less than a second in that one. But Winnipeg has shown some resiliency, but I'm a little concerned about how they win games. And I should have done a closer look before we started recording, but I'm going to say confidently that at least 4 of those games that they've won have been come from behind victories in the third period. And that's great. Kudos to you.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, that luck is going to run out, and you're going to have to start playing with the lead to avoid these third period comebacks, and we'll see how sustainable their success is. I'm just so hesitant because it feels like they rely so much on Connor Hellebuck, and then their offense all of a sudden comes to life for 15 minutes, and then Connor Hellebuck has to save them for 5 minutes. So I don't know. I'm not sold on the Jets yet.
You know what? And I mean, I was doing the little circles of kind of Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary before. I almost want to make that circle just a little bit bigger and include Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg's going to be fighting tooth and nail down the wire. And if you're the Flames or the Oilers right now, you're probably looking at leapfrogging the Jets, right? Those are that's kind of your prey at this point in terms of standings. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Yeah, it's great that they're in a playoff spot now. I don't know how sustainable that is. Talk about sustain. Sorry.
No, I want to hear you go off on sustainability. You go ahead.
Oh, I was doing a segue to our next team. So if you're done talking, yeah.
I'll hammer this out quick then. They had 2 games where they had more than or double-digit high danger chances. Otherwise, they're floating between 3 and 9 high danger chances of 5-on-5. So not creating a bunch of offense.
Yeah.
So sustainably wise, I'll throw to you, Mick.
Nice. Cool. And I guess we're also on that note, kind of with that Line A trade, we are waiting to see the return of Pierre-Luc Dubois and kind of see where that leads them. So on to number 2, though. Talking of sustainability, we're going to look at one of the metrics darlings of the league. Just had their very first home game, even though they're at the top of the standings. It's great. It's Les Habitants, Les Montreal Canadiens at number 2. What's going on with Montreal?
I'm just blown away that their off-season acquisitions have panned out the way that they have, and everything that was wrong with Montreal last year seems to have corrected itself. So that is, they're more. Edmondson was exactly as advertised. He's been great for the Habs in their own end. But you're seeing Nick Suzuki start to emerge as a star. And I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I said that at the start of the season. Yeah. Tyler Foley, Josh Anderson have both been big contributors offensively. And Gallagher, if you want to talk about sandpaper, Gallagher's been the sandpaper for that team, and a productive. So I'm going to call him a poor man's Brad Marchand because he kind of fits that exact same mold. Undersized, gritty guy who does score. And if they can keep this up and, insulate Carey Price a little bit because their shots against have been so low over the last 3 games at 5-on-5, no team has cracked 20, and that's actually 4 of the last 5 as well. So I'm high on Montreal. I think people are starting to recognize that, and the one piece that is just a little concerning is their shooting percentage is a little elevated. And high danger shooting percentage as well. So they're operating at about 14.4 and 32%, both of which are like way above what we've seen from the Avs and also what we would consider elite. Like I think the highest save or shooting percentage over the last 6 years has been about 11%, and that was the Bolts a couple years ago. So for the Habs to operate at 14.4, it's great, but it's not sustainable. Yeah. So if they can, rely on Price, well, that comes down a little bit. There's really the sky's the limit for this team this season.
Nice. And as you see on the screen, I'm just kind of flashing through our head-to-head Canucks Habs pool. I got my team right there. It is leading the pack with about 73 total points. Grant is close behind with 71. And if we kind of click to his team, you're seeing kind of just that balance scoring throughout. And the Habs are so funny, man. Like they're so funny with their trades, right? I know at the time I wasn't a fan of PK for Weber. I would think that seems like a really favorable trade for the Canadians the last 3-4 years, right? However long that's been. He's still kind of providing them that elite level defense, offensive productivity, whereas PK Subban, is he playing anymore? Right? He's on his second team. I didn't like it because it seemed like it came from a place of hate initially, but from a hockey point of view, it makes sense. The Jonathan Drouin trade, but like Max Domi for Anderson at this point looks like a steal of a deal, right? Like they got this big, strong kind of character. Seems a little more skilled than the Domies, right? I don't get it. It's almost like every trade they make is boom or bust, right? Like the Pacioretty, they got back a first-round pick and Nick Suzuki, and now Nick Suzuki looks like he's basically going to take over that first role, that first-line center, right? That kind of Pacioretty role going forward, right? So I mean, to be able to get assets on top of that prospect coming in, genius. It's just, I don't know. They're so hot and cold, this team.
Yeah, and I think what we saw last year was they just had terrible luck. Like their metrics supported that they should have been more successful than they were. And maybe this is just the correction phase of last year's metrics where we're starting to see this team maybe overachieve a little bit, as you can see with their shooting percentages, because it was so low last year that it was just bound to average out. Like there was no way for them to avoid like improving over their god-awful metrics last year. And like I said, those personnel changes have been key. And there's maybe, from what we've seen so far, I want to say only one other team that can skate with them in the NHL North Division. Yeah,
that's a great segue. One thing before we get to our top team in the Scotia North, I do wonder if this just goes to talk about how strong the Atlantic Division, the Atlantic Division used to be. Right, where you had your Torontos, you had your Montreals, you had the Bostons, you had the Tampa Bays, you had even like the Floridas, those guys kind of on the outside looking in, the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, they're not looking great right now, but I mean, in the past, like, you just wonder how important it was and how strong that division was, right? They kind of beat up on each other through most of the season, versus like you look at the old Pacific Division, right, where you have the 3 California teams, the kind of Pacific Northwest Canadian teams. And I wonder if you're just seeing that kind of that balance. They're like that dichotomy of kind of opposition right now, right? Where we're talking about, I don't know, a bunch of top 10 teams, right? If you were to kind of power rank them in the old Atlantic model. And that's kind of why the Toronto Montreals didn't look like they were anything super special, right? Because they were getting their butt kicked by some of the powerhouses of the league. Whereas now when they're against lesser opposition, all of a sudden you're going to see them kind of shine a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just to translate that to the postseason too, because with this new postseason format, I don't think it's fair. Like we should be getting some of these matchups as the Eastern Conference Final as opposed to a first round matchup. And I don't think the NHL is going to tweak what they do or how they do it, but it is going to be a little sour, that sour taste in your mouth when we go back to the old alignment, and there's no way to avoid it.
Oh, and I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, if anything, this is maybe our fourth podcast of the year. About a month in, take it in, drink it in, because this is some of the, as a sports fan, a Canadian sports fan, some of the best hockey you'll ever experience. You know that you're going to have one team in the Final Four. Seeing Montreal play Toronto in kind of the semifinals, it's going to be awesome, right? These series are going to be some of the best, the most fun you can have, right? So, I'm looking forward to it. I'm in full-blown hockey mode. It's good. It's great. Hopefully you're on board. If you're kind of like waffling on the season, you're like, it's COVID. No, give your head a shake. This is like the real deal. So,
and I think one of my favorite thing about this is that every Saturday we get an all-Canadian hockey night in Canada. And that maybe leads us to the top team in the NHL North Division, Toronto Maple Leafs.
I'll take your
That's two segues. I haven't nailed a segue in 5 years, but I just nailed two on the same team.
And I'll take your actual segue and like talk about things rather than divert it into a different topic altogether. I have notes on them too. Look at this. I'm just killing it. Oh, man. Yeah. Good job, me. Toronto Maple Leafs, arguably on paper one of the best teams in hockey. They're showing it right now at 7-2. Are they leading the league? I saw that somewhere. So 7 wins. So if you kind of scroll down, does everyone else have 7 wins? They do not. So they are actually, in fact, leading the league. So good job, Toronto Maple Leafs.
I would just like, and I know that people are, I'm sure we have some Leafs fans who listen to this who are probably going to eat me alive for this, but the Leafs aren't as good as we've seen them show that they are. And by that I mean they are overachieving relative to their metrics. In 5 of their 7, or no, let's see here, 7 of their 9 games they have been outplayed, and that is by posting a negative expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5. But with the potency of their lineup, and that is Matthews, Marner, Tavares, like their top 2 lines basically, who can just score at will, they are keeping alive by, scraping out some of these third period wins, kind of a la Jets, and, relying on some timely saves from Anderson.
Oh, and I mean, if you want to, like, an example, go back to last Sunday. So that started the third period for the Leafs. Every Calgary Flames player that hit the ice, they're up 3-1, but every Calgary Flames player looked like they were 15% faster than any Toronto Maple Leaf. I think they held the puck up until they scored and made it 3-2, or maybe even tied it up at that point. But I mean, like, there was zero puck control from this team. It was like night and day difference. And then as soon as it was 3-3, all of a sudden the Matthews line kicks in. They take the puck. They go down the ice. They score. It was kind of like a night and day difference. And it was a switch they can flip. It was just weird. Now, however, at the start of that Calgary game, to their credit, they looked maybe as sound defensively as I've ever seen this team in the last 15 years look. And I mean, I realize it's consistency, right? Like the last couple of years, this team has been atrocious defensively. If they can work on that consistency on defense and kind of incorporate that into just how they play the game, right? And as the season progresses, we see them become a little bit better defensively. This might be a Stanley Cup winning team. I have not allowed myself to say that, but if we can see that consistency on defense, even just creep up a little bit, right? Like they had a really good 20 minutes. I mean, you extend that 20 minutes to even 40 minutes of a game. The sky's the limit, right? For the squad.
You should have seen your face light up when you mentioned the Toronto Maple Leafs as potential Stanley Cup winners. It was just like this fucking moment of pure joy.
Oh, like I haven't really allowed myself that thought, right? Because I'm a realist and I'm like, it's not going to happen. This year, there's a really good chance. Like, you win your division, you get through the playoffs the first couple rounds, you're in the Final Four, right? I mean, unless there's some like type of juggernaut and we see the Capitals, but like that division looks like they're just going to beat themselves up, right? So like this is a really good chance this year. And if you can work on probably what's your greatest the weakness of this team is just that defensive responsibilities. You work on that? I don't know. We'll see. And then the only other note I have is I think it was the middle of the Flames game. I just wrote Awesome Matthews. I'm going to change it. His name's no longer Austin. It's just Awesome Matthews.
Just to speak to the defensive efficiency that you were alluding to, single-digit high-danger chances against in the first 7 games. It wasn't until these last few where they started to leak a few more opportunities. And same thing, scoring chances against is like high teens, low 20s, which is exactly what they needed to improve on last year. So if their offense can bail them out, their defense can play like this, who knows? Maybe we are talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs as Stanley Cup winners.
There's my face go again. So if I switch from league division to league, what happens? Oh, look at that. Toronto's still up top. Look at that. Yay. I mean, Montreal's 3rd, so, like, kudos to them. And Winnipeg's 8th. So, again, I mean, I think that's why you're seeing that discrepancy, right? And you're kind of seeing the Oilers and the Flames sitting down at the bottom. It's just like, they're playing some good hockey teams right now. So, but enough of that. Enough of that nonsense. Enough of those. Let's try and make you guys money. That's what we're doing. Start with fantasy.
My dirty fantasy, yeah, let's roll with that. I had to whip something together here, kind of last minute-ish, but I've taken a theme to today's betting approach, and you'll see as we combine these 2 segments or after we get through them what I'm talking about. You go ahead and let her rip with your lineup here.
Oh, I gotta make it really small to even see. Oh my goodness, it is just not favorable. Yeah, I wish I could scroll over. Anyways, so what I'm doing here, you can see. Oh my gosh, shit. No, it's not going to work. Great. What if I, shift the screen over? Yeah, that kind of works. Cuts me off. But I'm going to start with, I think we're going to see a high-scoring affair in that Vancouver-Winnipeg game later tonight. I'm guessing Winnipeg's going up on top. So what I kind of started with was I had a Connor Hellebuyck, stacked him with a Josh Morrissey. Not the greatest defenseman, but again, went with the kind of goalie I think is going to get a win. Off the top, I went with Mark Scheifele and a Blake Wheeler, so just kind of added to that Jets stack. Out of nowhere, I found for $4,700 Adam Henrique and Jakob Silfverberg of the Anaheim Ducks, so kind of keeping the stacks in mind. I know those guys aren't scoring a lot, but it's bound to happen at some point. These are quality hockey players. We're going to see their name on the score sheet. So with a stack like that, they're fairly cheap. And then we kind of have an interesting proposition here where we've got a lot of money to disperse between our 2 utility players and our other defensemen. So for example, what I've done thus far is I've got Connor McDavid, the highest priced player. I think we're going to see some magic this evening, paired with a Poulat and a Morgan Riley on defense there. But you can definitely play around with that positions. That's what, 48, 55, and an 89. You almost have like $20,000 worth of budget to kind of play around with this part of your lineup and go from there. I don't want to toot my horn too much, but last week I cashed in. I think that was one of the first hockey pools I've actually ever won. So taking that advice paid off. So again, maybe we want to go down on a Poulat. So I mean, for example, I think I was looking at this earlier, and I know we can get Philip Deneau for about 40 something. The most entertaining. I mean, at least on the audio, you can see me scrolling through stuff. In audio, there's nothing going on. Philip Deneau, $4,700. Which does leave us with about $800. So in theory, we could kind of move up for Morgan Riley, right? So if you're not kind of feeling the Morgan Riley play, you potentially could, when we switch to D-men, you could go up as high as Aaron Ekblad, Dougie Hamilton, Mark Giordano, Jeff Petrie, right? So you're thinking that might be kind of a better play there. And that's just how I'd play around with this lineup. So you kind of get that lineup, that bottom. What do you want to do, right? You could go down for McDavid, switch some money around there. And that's kind of my advice for this week.
I dig it. And I'm glad to hear your approach is paying off. I've tried to adopt that a little bit. Last week, I'm still kind of tinkering. I don't think I would have been in the money last week. I think I had about 130, 140 points, which I would have been maybe cash in some tournaments, but win your money back plus 10%. Not life-changing amounts here. So I've tried this new approach. It's double stacking. So I don't know if people actually do this or if this is a real thing. But for tonight's slate, what I did was I looked at 2 teams who I was really high on. Surprise, surprise, one of them is the Oilers. And then the other one will probably catch a few people off guard, and that is the Detroit Red Wings. So I did a double stack with, from the Wings, Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi, Philip Hronek, who's been huge on the Red Wings power play, and Bobby Ryan. So basically top line plus power play defenseman. And then from the Oilers, I went McDavid, Nurse, and Draisaitl, and Koskinen. Koskinen's been this kind of Jekyll and Hyde. We've seen a lot of Jekyll recently, so I'm hoping we get Hyde tonight. The other three, so Nurse, McDavid, and Draisaitl, have basically been the power play point getters for the Oilers. So basically, Nurse passes it to McDavid. McDavid sauces it over to Draisaitl. Draisaitl scores. If the Oilers are going to score on the power play, that's how it's going to be. So I place more of an emphasis on power play points because that seems to make a difference. So I've complemented those players with Mike Hoffman, who is, I thought, was super affordable at $5,300. So that lineup leaves you with about $400 to play around with. I am sold on this lineup. I think that it's going to be a big game for both the Red Wings and the Oilers. And just to speak to your Henrique and Silverberg picks, the Blues have been giving up like a dangerous amount of chances, and their goaltending hasn't been that great. So I think they've gone over in 7 of their 9 games to start the season or something like that. Like, it's a lot higher than what you'd expect.
Yeah,
so the over in that game is priced at plus money, but I think it's going to creep its way over. Not that I'm going to play that Bettor Advice. So I respect those Ducks picks of yours. Nice. Even though I don't know how successful the Ducks are going to be, they should be able to score against St. Louis. So
I mean, at that point, for around $4,700, you're looking at, it's kind of like bobbing for apples. Like, you're hoping you get one, but like there's a good chance you kind of come up with an open maw.
So yeah, that's what I got for my Dirty Fantasy. I think that this will be kind of my last litmus test to see how I do, and it's just going to be ripping the Band-Aid off next week, and that is actually playing lineups to see if I can turn this into tens, if not hundreds of dollars.
Sweet. Actually, that's a lie. I think I won one last year. So I've won like 2 hockey ones. Not a lot of success coming from that way, but I have a bunch of money from like football winnings over the year, so I'm just going to kind of run it out and see what happens. So.
Cool, man.
Cool, yo. On to Bettor Advice. Oh, you can't fully see the screen here. Can I do that zoom thing? Zoom. Nope, that doesn't get us anywhere. How about the other way? Boop, boop. Yeah, there we go. Nice. So how'd you do last week?
I think we both did all right last week. What did I end up playing? I ended up playing... I haven't been able to get these overtime picks figured out for myself this year for whatever reason. I haven't won yet, but that was my only loss. I have Boston, Philly creeped over thanks to some third period scoring. Winnipeg covered the puck line, and Winnipeg straight up... or no, maybe it was an empty netter. Was that the 6-4 game? Anyways, Winnipeg covered the puck line, and also, it was Ottawa, and it was third period comeback. They won 6-3, I remember now. So, overall on the season, so I lost 20 with the overtime pick and then won my next 3 bets. On the season, I'm up $110.52, and that gives me a return on investment of about 36.8%. We obviously have that $100 outstanding from the preseason show where we kind of spent it on futures. So, off to a good start in my Bettor Advice.
Nice.
How'd you do?
I think I kind of just basically got down to even. I won. I think I hit on all 3 of my overpicks, as well as, so I missed out on my overtime, and I missed my second leg of the parlay. I hit one of them, and then I forget where I kind of messed that one up. But essentially, it kind of almost put me close to even. I'm down about $14 on the year, so it's not bad. Right after a couple weeks, I think I've kind of got that down. My strategy of how I'm going to go forward, rather than just kind of throw random darts at the board, I've kind of come up with my like little how I want to spend my bankroll. So I'm feeling good, feeling good. I'm going to come back, try and get to even. Yeah. Yeah.
You can see from my picks today that I'm feeling very confident because I'm doing something that I don't normally do.
Okay.
And that is a moneyline parlay. If you gathered from my FanDuel lineup, Wings and Oilers are 2 teams that I'm looking at. They're both plus money underdogs on home ice. So I have an Oilers Red Wings parlay for 4 plus the 434 for $20. Both teams are overdue for some wins, and it's going to come at the expense of teams who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, and Florida and Toronto both check those boxes. So here's hoping that pays off. I've got 2 overtime bets for today. Colorado, Minnesota. Colorado, we know what to expect. They're an offensive juggernaut. And what the last thing you want to do, I did a dive on them earlier in the week, is when they have 5 or more power plays. I think they're 4-0 on the season now. So you want to avoid, obviously, giving their power play room to operate. At 5-on-5, they haven't been that efficient. And they're going into against a Minnesota team that is really hard to play against in Minnesota. And they play that tight defensive brand. And that's been particularly true this year. So I don't think Colorado wins this. I think Minnesota wins it, but I think it takes overtime to get there. And this is one of the steepest games on the board at plus 320. So I have Colorado, Minnesota, 60-minute draw at plus 320 for $20. I was going to go Calgary money line, but one of the things that I love to do is also bet a Hockey Night Canada game to go to overtime. I don't know why. I did a look into this a few years ago, and it just seemed like reliably 1 out of the 3 games would always go to overtime. So I'm picking Montreal-Calgary to do that tonight. I was on the fence about it. I thought Calgary was going to win, but I will bet that it goes to overtime. Montreal-Calgary plus 300 for $20. That leaves me $40. I almost talked myself into switching it into the over while we were kind of segueing to this section, but I'm going to stick with my gut on this one. Blues minus 158, better team, light years ahead of the Ducks where the Ducks are at. Their offense is clicking. Their defense, their goaltending metrics should improve at some point, but nevertheless, Blues minus 158 for $40. So I got 4 plays, parlay, 2 overtime bets, and the Blues straight up.
Awesome. Great. So the only thing I'm going to say about that Colorado game, and I was noticing this earlier when I was building my FanDuel lineup, and if you look at the screen now, for some reason, Hunter Miska, Philip Grubauer, and Pavel Francouz, all the goalies for the Avalanche, are $8,600, and that's changed as of this morning, kind of when I was putting together a lineup. So for some reason, Hunter Miska has kind of jumped up, so I don't know if there's some type of issue with Grubauer, if he's a game time decision. It looks healthy. I can't see any reports, but just something to keep an eye on too if you're kind of doing a little bit of gambling later, assuming you don't get your bets in earlier. For myself, I kind of like those everything Grant was saying. I agree with. I really enjoy that he was almost, but then also kind of worried over in that St. Louis game. So the way I'm going to try and allocate my money is about $66 to some over-unders. Try and go at least 2 out of 3, if not 3 out of 3. That way I'm at least making back my money, and that means the other 40? Actually, sorry, I'm going to do $20 in each of those games, not 22, and then spend the other $40 on kind of more long shot plays, try and make up some money that other way. So for the 3 overs I have St. Louis, Anaheim, over 5.5 goals at plus 110. I like that one. I've got the Flyers and Islanders at even on the over at 5.5 goals. And then Boston, Washington, over 5.5 goals is minus 120. I like all those plays, $20 on each of those, which leaves me with $40. I'm going to take 2 underdogs, both the Calgary Flames and the Oilers. Do I have them written down anywhere? I don't think I do. I believe they're plus 110 or something like that.
So I got, Oilers at plus 110 and the Flames were plus 106.
Plus 106, yeah. So I'm going to do $20 on each of those plays. Assuming I hit one, kind of pays for the other. If I hit both, I'm up some money, right? So that's kind of my thinking there. And I think we're just going to we have to see a regression at some point, right? I think, like Grant was saying, the Flames are too good of a team to lose 4 games in a row, right? And I think Montreal, I don't know, we're seeing a very high shooting percentage. At some point, that's going to come down, and I want to be on the right side of that. Oh, and I guess that's the same game. So why the Oilers? Well, obviously, I'm wearing a Wayne Gretzky jersey, so I want to see how much of a rub can I put to this team? And at some point, I have to be disappointed watching the Maple Leafs this year, right? I've only been disappointed twice thus far. That doesn't feel right. So I'm betting on my own misery.
You're hedging your own misery. That's the difference. Because if the Leafs win, you're going to be happy. And we've seen you take this approach with the Raptors. So really, there is no losing tonight.
I spent so much money on that championship. I was out hundreds of dollars. It was awful, but it feels good. Looking back, would I rather have $400 or would I rather have a championship banner on my wall? Banner all the time. So
yeah. And that banner actually hangs in your wall, so good for you.
Yeah. Awesome. So those are kind of my picks there. That's where my money's going. You've seen my fantasy lineup. kind of a good skeleton. I honestly, for some reason, was really struggling. So just kind of back to that Bettor Advice. Last week, I put together a great little lineup, loved it. This week, I really struggled to kind of allocate my money to where I wanted to go, and I don't know if that's just FanDuel correcting, making some corrections, making some players worth more than others, right? So
I gotta say, today came a little naturally for me when I was looking at things, and I did spend a little bit more time doing a dive into things. So fantasy-wise, my Dirty Fantasy and my picks I'm sold with. I'm actually going to go bet a Sports Select tie ticket, so betting 3 games to go to the shootout. Definitely including the games that I talked about. I'm undecided on the third one, but maybe I'll post something on Instagram, buy a case of beer, and we'll see how the night ends.
Yeah, it sounds sweet. Nice. So that the only thing we have left is a Babe of the Week. I'll cue up my Instagram, and Grant, lead the way.
You're actually going to be a little disappointed on this one, because like I've talked about, inclusivity is important. We are actually going with our first ever Man Rocket Babe of the Week. And he doesn't have Instagram. But as I was watching Hockey Night in Canada last week, I was like falling in love with BXN. I could see what the mixed attraction was. And it isn't just from a hockey perspective. That guy's a fucking certified Man Rocket. So Kevin Bieksa, he's on Twitter. His wife is on Instagram, and there's a Kevin Bieksa fan page, which is just Kevin Bieksa. But he himself doesn't exist, but he is our Man Rocket, Babe of the Week. First ever man, Kevin Bieksa. Schwing!
Yeah, great. Good job, Bieksa. I can't say your name. I'm just going to call you Kevin. I don't know. Man Rocket. I got to come up with something. He is a delight. And like I was saying last week, one of those things, definitely not disappointed. And one of the things that hockey has credit to versus the other sports, their halftime or their intermission shows are really freaking good. They talk about things that matter. They keep you up to date on things. It's almost like appointment television almost. Whereas NFL, their game days or their intermissions are awful. They show you highlights for some reason. Watch DJ Moore on this 60-yard touchdown catch. Oh, and the Panthers are down by 3 touchdowns. And I'm like, why are you showing me that highlight then? That means nothing, right? They don't provide you with any insight, and they kind of let the personalities. They're like, oh, here's, I don't even know what the guys are, right? I'm like, I don't like it. I don't want to see Michael Strahan just stand there being like, hey, what's going on, right? Whereas maybe NBA on TNT's a little better with Shaq and Barkley. They've kind of got the personalities with some content. But again, they kind of seem like they're making their own controversies, right? They'll call out players. They kind of have these brash opinions, and they're almost like the stories. Whereas Hockey Night in Canada is really freaking good. They're entertaining start to finish. They actually, again, they talk about the game. They tell you. It's excellent. Say what you want. At some point, somebody else is going to catch on to this. And I do think we could see a potential growth in interest in hockey in the States, right? It's one of the lower sports, but just based on the broadcasting. Now, if you watch NBC, they kind of suck. Mike Milbury does not have the same talent that they have on kind of the Hockey Night panel. So I don't know if we'll see that kind of that cross-border interest grow at any point. But good job, Hockey Night in Canada. Man, I'm impressed.
Yeah, Mick, you're a hockey boner showing.
What?
He's not kidding. He normally has to pull it down from here.
Yeah, it's only semi. I didn't have the Instagram. So there's my knock, and I'm definitely not just saying that as wanting to be a future employee of yours, Hockey Night in Canada. Maybe so what we got going on. Or TSN, maybe we could do the TSN panel. Steve Dangle, he went from YouTube personality to he does podcasts to he's on Sportsnet now. So I don't know, there's another network that's looking for some handsome, charming, charismatic,
disease-free.
We're here.
Hockey analysts. Yeah, that's what we're here for. And you know what? If nothing else, we have our loyal listeners who will continue to tune in and hopefully make some money with us on our gambling advice, whether that's My Dirty Fantasy or Bettor Advice. So It's going to be a good year, Mick.
And I guess just throwing this out there, if you are a loyal listener or if you're new to the program, next week we get to talk about the big game. I don't think we're actually you're not allowed to say Super Bowl. We're probably fine because we don't make money on this, but you have to say big game unless you have like written permission from the NFL. So we're going to be doing our annual prop show on the big game. So we'll see whose career Grant can ruin this year.
Man, I can't wait. You know what? I think it would be like a personal highlight for me if we did get a cease and desist letter. So I'm not even going to shy away from it. We are betting Super Bowl props all next week. It's my favorite show of the year because we just get to burn through all this money and take a deep dive into the biggest game of the year. Yeah,
it's good. So, cool. So with that, just something to look forward to for next week. And yeah, kind of take it in, enjoy some good games on the schedule tonight. So, cool.
Well, that's all we got for today. So, Mick, party on.
Party on, Grant.
We'll see everybody next week.
Bye.